Guten Morgen, liebe Gäste, guten Morgen, Damen und Herren. Ich freue mich sehr, dass Sie Zeit gefunden haben, hier bei uns zu sein und diese Ausstellung sozusagen zu besichtigen. Ich freue mich sehr, dass das Kunsthaus Bregenz Otobong Nkanga gewonnen hat, hier eine Ausstellung zu machen. Also ich wünsche mir einen großen Applaus für diese großartige Künstlerin und Sie werden... Sie werden sehen, sozusagen, es ist eigentlich nicht nötig, irgendetwas zu sagen, sondern Otobong, you're such an eloquent and intellectually sophisticated person and such a great artist. Und, Sie werden sehen, sie spricht so wunderbar über ihre Arbeiten, also es ist fast sozusagen müßig, etwas zu sagen. Ich darf noch weiters begrüßen Koen Havebeke. Er ist Generaldelegierter der Regierung Flanderns. Er unterstützt auch diese Ausstellung. Herzlichen Dank für Ihr Kommen. Und Martin Rauch, den Sie alle kennen, wenn Sie aus der Region sind. Martin und Otobong haben eng zusammengearbeitet und überhaupt ist die Idee der Kollaboration, des Zusammenarbeitens, des Zusammenfindens ein wichtiger Aspekt im Œuvre von Otobong Nkanga. Und Sie sehen sozusagen, die Eingriffe auch hinter uns deuten schon darauf hin, dass Martin Rauch einen großen Anteil hatte. Ich darf mich bedanken bei allen, die diese Ausstellung ermöglicht haben, besonders natürlich beim Team des Kunsthauses Bregenz. Es war wieder mal eine ganz, ganz großartige Leistung. Sie können sich vorstellen, so ein Drum von einem Stamm hier reinzubringen, ihn dann zu fixieren und auch so, dass es sozusagen nicht gefährlich ist, das gehört zu einer Großleistung. Und also vielen, vielen Dank an alle, die im Kunsthaus Bregenz arbeiten, weil es war wieder mal wirklich eine großartige Leistung. Ich möchte mich bei den vielen Sponsoren bedanken, die das Kunsthaus permanent unterstützen. Dazu gehört die Hypo Vorarlberg, mit der wir ja über dieses Jahr ein sehr, sehr schönes Projekt gemacht haben, das jetzt momentan eingewintert ist. Aber Sie haben es vielleicht gesehen, Roman Siegner, also vielen Dank dafür. Wir haben nicht mit der Hypo, Entschuldigung, mit den Ilwerke VKW gearbeitet. Also das sind zwei unserer permanenten Sponsoren und natürlich auch sehr, sehr wichtig ist auch die Unterstützung der Freunde des Kunsthaus Bregenz. Die Präsidentin sitzt da hinten, Margarete Eberle. Wir haben aber auch Unterstützer speziell für diese Ausstellung. Dazu gehört die Unica, die ist gegenwärtig durch den Regionaldirektor Markus Stadelmann. Schön, dass du da bist. Wir haben natürlich auch andere Sponsoren. Die MS Österreich ist wichtig für uns und OutZ, das werden Sie nicht kennen, das ist eine internationale Vereinigung, vor allem junger Unterstützerinnen und Unterstützer für Gegenwartskunst. Und da sehen Sie schon so, Otobong Nkanga zieht die Aufmerksamkeit an, zieht aber auch Kollaboration an und das ist eine ihrer wichtigsten Ideen. Ich übergebe jetzt sehr gern an den Herrn Havebeke. Vielleicht können Sie ein bisschen erzählen, wie Sie dieser Kunst begegnet sind.
So, herzlichen Dank. Erstmal sehr freut, dass ich hier und heute in Bregenz das Wort ergreifen darf. Sehr verehrte Damen und Herren, Sie wissen, wie das geht mit Diplomaten. Wenn die das Wort ergreifen, man weiß, wenn es startet, man weiß niemals, wenn es endet. Aber ich werde mich kurz fassen, ich verspreche das. Weil ich auch weiß, dass Sie nicht gekommen sind, um sich eine reizlose Rede von einem langweiligen Diplomaten anzuhören, sondern diese wunderbare Geschichte, die Otobong Nkanga hier für uns vorbereitet hat. Der Direktor hat es schon gesagt, ich bin der diplomatische Vertreter von Flandern, das nördliche Bundesland Belgiens. Wir haben viel gemein. Sie wissen, dass wir schon 80 Jahre der Geschichte teilen. 1713, 1795, das war die gemeinsame Geschichte unter die Donaumonarchie. Aber auch in die jüngere Geschichte haben wir viel zusammen gemacht. Und ich kann Ihnen sagen, dass Österreich für Flandern ihm sehr wichtig war. Wir haben unsere erste diplomatische Vertretung in Wien eröffnet, schon vor 27 Jahren. Sehr viel ist inzwischen passiert, das werde ich jetzt nicht aufleisten, das würde uns viel zu weit führen. Aber was ich sagen kann, dass wir immer wieder sehr auf die kulturelle Zusammenarbeit eingesetzt haben. Wie das so geht, an erster Stelle in der Hauptstadt in Wien wo wir zum Beispiel mit das Kunsthistorische Museum sehr gut zusammenarbeiten. Sie werden sich noch alle diese Bruegel-Ausstellung aus 2018 noch erinnern. Mit Impulstanz haben wir sehr oft zu tun, aber nicht nur mit der Hauptstadt, auch mit den verschiedenen Ländern, auch mit Vorarlberg. Und so hatten wir schon flämische Kunst hier in Bregenz im Rahmen der Festspiele mit Anna-Theresa de Keersmaker, Tanz, Rosas, bestimmt bekannt, mit Wim van de Keibus in 2014. Aber auch hier in diesem Haus hat es schon Kunst aus Flandern gegeben. Ich glaube, 2015 hatten wir Berline de Bruyker und 2018 David Glabaut. Und jetzt, 2021, auf Neues mit vom Besten, sagen Sie es bitte nicht, aber ich sage so, das bleibt zwischen uns, vom Besten, was wir zurzeit in Flandern zu bieten haben. Und deswegen unterstützen wir diese Ausstellung auch sehr, sehr gerne. Wenn Sie mir eine kleine Anekdote gestatten, würde ich noch Folgendes sagen wollen. Ich bin jetzt schon länger im Ausland unterwegs, Sie sind es mir auch an, ich bin nicht mehr so jung. Und in diesen 37 Jahren habe ich mit verschiedensten Partnern zusammenarbeiten dürfen und bisweilen auch mal mussten. Wie das so geht im Leben, habe ich mir da die verschiedensten Partner in Kategorien eingestuft. Kategorie 1, die würde ich benennen als die schlaflosen Nächte. Nichts hat geklappt. Alles, was falsch gehen konnte, ist falsch gelaufen. Und das waren auch die Partner, von denen man gesagt hat, nicht wieder. Und dann die zweite Kategorie, das ist so in der Mitte gelaufen, wie es sein sollte. Und man hat mir gesagt, ja gut, wenn das nochmal passt, weshalb nicht? Und dann gibt es die obere Liga, Profis. Gleich hat alles gestimmt, halbes Wort hat gereicht. Und es wird Ihnen nicht überraschen, wenn ich sage, dass das Kunsthaus, das Team von Herrn Thummer, genau in dieser obersten Liga spielt. Ich bedanke mich bei allen, vor allem nochmal bei den Künstlerinnen und ich wünsche Ihnen allen eine wunderbare Entdeckung dieser sehr interessanten Ausstellung. Dankeschön.
Vielen herzlichen Dank. Otobong hatte die Idee, das Kunsthaus sozusagen von oben nach unten oder von unten nach oben zu denken. Es ist ja aufgebaut aus 4 Stockwerken. Aber kann man ein Kunstwerk entstehen lassen, sozusagen, das wirklich über 4 Stockwerke geht? Und ich halte mich ganz kurz. 2 davon sehen Sie. Das erste untere Viertel. Ein Baum, der durch alle Stockwerke geht und daneben oder davor ein toxisch wirkender Tümpel und ein großes Wandbild, eine Tapisserie, die extra für diese Ausstellung hier entstanden ist, und zwar im Textilmuseum Tilburg in Holland, wo Otobong an diesem großartigen Wandteppich gearbeitet hat. Dieser Wandteppich hat, wie die Geschosse, eben 4 Teile, die Sie übereinander denken müssen. Also das ist nur der unterste Teil dieses Bildes und wir sehen da der Abyss. Im Deutschen gibt es das wunderbare Wort Abgrund. Also da ist der tiefe Meeresgrund, da sehen Sie die Mineralien und die Korallen und ein Blau, das seinem Namen gerecht wird, nämlich Ultramarin ist und die Farben glitzern. Es ist ein unglaubliches Gewebe. Darüber werden Sie immer höher gehen und höher in den Tiefen, schließlich ans Land kommen und am Ende in einer Art Feuersbrunst. Das ist sozusagen auch eine Abfolge der Elemente. Aber ich werde nicht viel erzählen, das kann sie viel, viel besser. Diese Abgründigkeit, diese Tiefe des Meeres ist auch die Tiefe der Zeit. So I was talking about the image and the tapestry and that, the blue is kind of a depth of time as well as the depth of the sea. Maybe you can continue the story.
Thank you for all coming, and I don't know how to transit from that, but I will try. Well, it's been really a pleasure working here at the Kunsthaus Bregenz, and when Thomas invited me in 2018, I think we met in Basel and then later on in Venice, and then I visited Bregenz in 2019. And I couldn't imagine how sumptuous this building is, how amazing it is. From the outside, you'd have a different kind of feeling, and once you come in, it totally surprises you. So once I came into the building, I was like, wow. Then I had to go through the 4 floors. But one of the things that I had imagined then was to be able to make a sound piece or fluids, or, there are many thoughts that came through my mind. But as I continued thinking about the space, and it developed slowly to be able to think of it as almost entering into different levels of the sea, and to imagine the first floor as the abyss, or the second floor as the midnight zone, the third floor, no, the ground floor, as the abyss, the first floor as the midnight zone, the second floor as twilight, and the last floor as sunlight. So it was a way to think through the space, but I started working on the tapestry and started thinking about that notion of energy, and also the notion of the shift of man working into machine. But also when I talk about energy, I was really thinking about underneath, now we're looking at electric cars, we're looking at ways, other alternative forms of energy, and where to find that energy. And there is a lot of discussion about the deep sea and about the sea itself. And so I started looking at that relationship between that act of extracting from the sea and the non-visibility of actually seeing that action taking place, into the correlation with what happens on the surface. And I think this last year, a year and a half, has been quite difficult, because we also got to realize that a lot of people could not work. A lot of people were also at home. A lot of people lost their jobs, and what does that mean for the economy in the future? What does that mean in relation to energy? What does that mean in relation to extractions? There were many thoughts that were going through my mind, but it made sense to make a tapestry that talks about years and years of human bodies that have been lost at sea, and how organic matter also shifts into mineral bodies. If we think of ourselves, we are made of calcium, magnesium, copper. We're made of all these minerals. And I was just thinking of 400, 500 years of movements of people from the African continent into the Americas, and that relationship of the bodies that were meant to go to work, that were lost at sea. And at the same time, the same sea will then produce the cobalt, the copper, the magnesium, manganese, and things that we actually take out to be able to create energy. So I always think of energy as never something that is lost, but is something that is constantly moving from one form into another. So it's always a certain kind of movement. So the tapestry talks about that in a certain way, but it's also talking about the loss of the gestures of the hands working in a space. It's also talking about the machine that takes out minerals and elements. And as you go through the floors, one way of seeing it is that the tapestry is divided into 4 parts, but actually the main is actually one work. So here we can actually see at this point that the tapestry was drawn. This is the carton, or the drawing for the tapestry. So the bottom part you have is here, and the second level is here, the third level is here, and the fourth level is here. So it's actually one narrative of the tapestry and the machine taking out the minerals, the bodies falling into the sea, the breaking of the hand that works into the machine that takes over and starts working, and into that relationship of the dark, deep sea into the hot burning sun. So the way I was thinking about it was to connect the histories of a tree, and how we see, even at this point in time, a lot of burning forest trees, but we also have to think that if the Gulf Stream changes the temperatures, it also affects the top. So it's really the subterranean way of like connecting the surface, the top with the bottom. And the tree cuts through the whole space. And here's a tree from the Grunbach region, Doren, Grunbach, and it actually it's actually a tree from here. But the most amazing thing is that I thought the Kunsthaus Bregenz was huge, but this tree is much, much bigger than the Kunsthaus Bregenz. So most times when you walk through the forest, you never realize that the tree is so majestic. It's bigger than a lot of the buildings that are surrounding us. And here I wanted to frame the tree and for us to get closer to be able to observe the tree. One thing I would want to say is that I was really worried about taking out a tree from the region. But Hubert, the person that found the tree, he found a tree that was already dying. It's a tree of 100 years old, and the tree has had a mistletoe that has been eaten into it, so it would have gradually died. And so we took the tree also because the tree was blocking other younger trees from growing because of the light. There wasn't enough light. So he chose a tree that was already in the process of losing life. And in a way, by cutting it down, it gave more life to the other trees. And we also planted 4 other trees because we took 1. The way of thinking of the exhibition was also to think about ways of working also with Martin. How can we work with materials that we can take back into the earth? So everything that you'd have here can actually go back into the soil, and in the soil it will not pollute it. So for me it was very important to think of an exhibition that has a cycle. And Martin was saying, yeah, even if we mix colors, we mixed earth, you can still take it back. You can still work with it. It will create another tone, another color. But these were ways we were thinking about for the exhibition. And that's why it was very important to work with Martin, because he has the knowledge of the Vorarlberg region. He has the knowledge of the soil, and to understand the local, what the local soil gives. And with that, we were able to make this work, think together, draw together, and build together. Thank you. Oh, sorry, which one? What do you want? Martin?
Ja, ich darf gleich anschließen. Danke auch für die Einladung. Und es war für mich eine spezielle Herausforderung, mit Otobong zu arbeiten. Und es war, also, wie sie jetzt gerade vorher so schön erzählt hat, die Mineralogie und dieses Weg, also dieser Gedanke, der hat mich so stark angesprochen, weil ich mit diesem Gedanken auch selbst sehr viel arbeite. Also ich arbeite seit Jahrzehnten mit der lokalen Erde. Mit welcher Erde? Das ist eigentlich, oder was ist Lehm? Lehm ist eigentlich nichts anderes als erodiertes Gestein. Unsere Berge erodieren und es also verändert die Topografie. Und wenn entsprechendes Klima ist, dann wächst da oben eben diese Bäume. Und das ist so ein symbolstarkes Element, dass man diese Erde nehmen kann, mit denen also bauen kann, mit dem eben die Landschaft gestalten kann. Und was wir verwendet haben, ist einfach Lehm und Schlamm, das ist aus demselben Material. Und das Material, das sind also über 50 Tonnen Lehmmaterial und Schlamm, ungefähr 6, 7 Tonnen, das wir in Schlinz produziert haben. Und das habe ich hier eigentlich nur ausgeliehen. Das Material nehme ich 1:1 wieder zurück, wird wieder gemischt in die Produktion eingeflossen, und damit werden praktisch wieder Häuser gebaut. Also dieser Recycling, also das ist eigentlich, Gedanke ist sehr wichtig. Die Zusammenarbeit mit Otobong war eine sehr respektvolle und auf gleicher Augenhöhe. Wir haben irgendwie, es war so ein spielerisches Arbeiten. Also wir haben zwar das gedacht, also wie wir das vorstellen, aber während dem Prozess ist das so geflossen und es sind ungefähr so 10 Mitarbeiter von der Firma Rasenmatt und von unserer Firma haben da gearbeitet und es war für sie auch etwas ganz Neues und man hat gesehen, wie sie richtig Lust gehabt haben, das Spielerische mit diesem Schlamm zu arbeiten und wie so langsam das entstanden ist und am Schluss haben alle gelacht und sie waren alle begeistert und das ist eigentlich, ja, wenn man die Arbeit gerne macht, dann macht es auch eine Freude.
And as a present, this night, Otobong started to sing for the boys. But maybe Otobong, you can tell something about the floor 1 and 2 and the tree and the glass balls.
Yes. So I'll continue from the part of like singing. I stayed in Schlins at Martin's brother's house, and every day waking up to the mountain and just opening the door was amazing. And so we built a deep relationship with all the workers from your workshop, and so by the time they all came here to work, it just felt natural. I would want to thank Martin for opening his doors, trusting me, giving me his own personal key to enter into his workspace where there was nobody, and I could just work the whole day trying out with soil. And I know that that is the moment that someone trusts you and that person believes in you. And so I would like to thank you for that, because it really touched my heart that you did that. And from there, all the people, he mobilized the whole team to prepare the soil, to come here to work. The work was installed in 2 days. I've never, ever seen anybody, or even in all the exhibitions I've done in different parts of the world, in amazing institutions, this is the first time that I'm actually seeing people that can install with such happiness and joy and love 2 floors in 2 days. So what you're seeing was a manpower, also a deep understanding of the material, and also the kind of connection that Martin has with his team. So he doesn't have to say much, but some of them have worked for 8 years, 10 years, 15 years with Martin. And his sister, Asunta, who has been working with him for 20 years, came and was building the soil with us. And for me, that is like one of the most amazing gifts I've had in my life, that someone gives that. So I would like to thank you personally for what you've done and the love that you've given to this project. I will start with the first floor. The first floor, you have the tapestry abyss, and I did not give any title or separate titles to the work. We just called the floor Unearthed Abyss, because that's the title of the tapestry. But I consider the way of thinking about this exhibition as kind of stratas, almost like you could open or go through a mine or go through the floors, or even when you're thinking of rammed earth, they're like little stratas of information of soil. And even when we're thinking of a geological space or geological ground, we normally see different time and time frames compressed over time in the soil. And even with a stone, you might see those stratas that are forming. So I kind of took this building as a way of thinking of stratas, and to slice it through and to create a work that cuts through every floor. So the tree, we start from the trunk, and the floor here kind of announces a bit things that you're going to see along the way. The tree itself is held down by this pond, and within this pond you have like different kinds of soils. Here we have many elements. You have like the red pigmented soil, to the yellow soils, and also to the soils that you find really in the Vorarlberg region. And it's sculpted in a way that it will slowly dry and crack. At the end, we're already seeing the cracks. But that relationship of thinking of water, but water that we have here in the sea, salty water, a representation of that, and here much more softer water. But that correlation of thinking of that relationship of salt water into soft water or fresh water happens in a not a direct way, but in a space in between. I remember being in Senegal or being in different parts or in the Emirates, and I think you saw the work in the Emirates. And my thought was also thinking about how the seawater is slowly sipping into fresh water. So for example, in the Emirates, you get to realize that a lot of the wells that used to produce fresh water ends up having a lot of salt and brine water. So it was a way of, in two separate worlds, connecting that notion of the water that is constantly shifting, in which we do not see, but this is due to desalination, this is due to the ways in which we are actually consuming so much water and so much fresh water that the salt and the seawater is actually seeping slowly into our drinking water. But it's also affecting the trees, it's also affecting all other things around there. But these were thoughts that I was putting in place to be able to think about how this tapestry works with the other part of the work. But as you go upstairs, you get to the next floor, and we start thinking about that floor as a way of the tree continues, and here we start preserving. So you have these glass balls that were made in Murano, and we're having little plants, and we have also a little baby tree. I found when I went to Rumbach to plant my tree, the trees, while the first tree I was planting, next to it I found a baby tree. It's not even up to a year, and it was a baby tree of the same tree. And so I took the baby tree and I put that baby tree in the glass ball. So that baby tree is not even 1 year, and this is over 100 years. And I found that quite beautiful, that this tree will enter into the glass ball as a way of conserving, or when we think of something that we contain, or we imagine, it looks like something a bit more science fiction, how you kind of contain, well, for me, it's like, how you kind of contain things in a ball, a kind of terrarium, but it's also referring in a way to the colonial kind of aspects of how plants were transported from tropical zones into other zones. The terrariums that were made and in which plants were conserved to keep a climate-controlled temperature. So the plants themselves, you would not need to take care of them. They're in this bowl and they stay there. And once in a while, maybe once in a year, you add a little bit of water. But that water is controlled at the same temperature, the same humidity, so that the plants can be conserved for a long time. While the other part, the tree is slowly dying. You will see it over time that the moss on the tree will get drier, that the tree itself is already dead, but, well, kind of dying, but it's slowly losing its color, its vitality, while on the other side, connected to the rope, are little life forms or life, possibility of life. So that connection with the rope connects one that is dying to one that is being conserved, one that is being taken care of, and one that is going to stay alive. The tapestry itself, on the other side, we start seeing in the tapestry a kind of mapping. So we first might think it's a net, but the drawing or the image of that comes from the way we are mapping the sea, the way that we create this kind of topographic mapping lines to be able to tell where there are heights of rocks and mountains. And at the same time, we start seeing life forms being appearing within the tapestry. So we also have hands that are falling down slowly, in which we see here, falling down into the abyss. And then I'll go to the second floor. And the second floor, we have the continuation of the tree. The tree has been stuck in an angle, piercing it from about a kind of maybe 60 degrees angle into, through the building right to the top. On the second floor, there's a continuation of the plants, the soil, and we have some other bowls that have all the different colors of soil that we use for building on this floor and also on the last floor. And we also have the remnants of the burnt tree, which you will see on the fourth floor. And the tapestry continues from the topographic mapping and shifts into a net, the fishing net, which traps most life forms in the sea. And then it shifts from that net into a landscape from sea to land, and that's the twilight zone. And then on the land, you have the fallen hands, the hands that are not working anymore, the labor that is shifting from human labor into automation or into mechanical labor, mechanical machineries. And so there we're seeing the kind of fall of man in a way, but we're also seeing the hands that also take out and consume all these life forms from the sea. The last floor, we move into sunlight, and in sunlight we are entering with the tapestry into the death of the land somehow, where we feel within the tapestry the threads are looser, and we also feel the burning of the landscape, the end of the tree somehow. But within the end of the tree, you have also life in the tapestry, which are plants, but the plants are related to plants that are used in cemeteries to be able to mourn and to be able to take care of the death or the passing of someone. So they're heath plants and sort of ivy plants on the tapestry. But that's where we worked a lot with Martin, where we created a path that is rammed earth, but another path where you have the schlimmer, or let's say the kind of slip or mud in different tones, which will slowly dry over the course of the exhibition. So that relationship of thinking of something drying, a landscape that is slowly losing water, slowly drying out. So the last floor, the third floor, is kind of looking at a way of how even the water that we have, how certain landscapes are already drying out, how certain places are already losing their vitality, how certain places are also getting burnt. We saw that a lot. We've been seeing a bigger acceleration of the burning of trees, of landscapes in Congo, the Amazon, California, Greece, Turkey, Siberia. This last year during the coronavirus was just like constant burning in different, and there were even places that weren't mentioned of how much has burned, how much trees have gone. So when we're here and we look at the mountain and we look at the possibilities that these trees are still here is actually a gift. And so each time I looked out at the mountain, I was imagining other places that have lost their livelihoods, that have lost the possibility of working. I remember I was in Athens for 4 months, and I lived in Greece for a little bit of time. And during this time that it was burning, some of my friends were totally devastated. And some said their families that had forests or had olive trees, what that meant to lose the amount of olive trees and what that meant in relation to an economy. And that's why when you see in the tapestry, the fallen hands, it's not just the fallen hands, it's also relating to once there is death, or once there is a slow breakdown of a system, what that does to the people that live there, what that does to the economy, what that does to making the labor, the amount of money, the possibility of building capital. And so for me, that correlation of the loss is also connected deeply to the tree, is connected deeply to water, is connected deeply to the soil. And so it was important to place them in a way that some of them are actually enacting the moment of drying out slowly, of a slow loss, while others are representations of.
Thank you, Otobong, for these many questions. Möglichkeit für Fragen und Anregungen oder Detailwissen. Wenn nicht, es gibt sicher in kleineren Runden Möglichkeit zum Gespräch. Otobong geht sicher auch durch you are guiding a little bit and in smaller constellations of conversation, right? Wonderful. Also haben Sie vielen Dank. Thank you so much, Otobong. Thanks to our guests as well. Und wir freuen uns über die Berichte, über diese Ausstellung. Wir öffnen sie morgen zwischen 17 und 20 Uhr und am Samstag am Vormittag gibt es noch einmal ein sogenanntes Künstlerfrühstück, also ein Gespräch zwischen Otobong und mir. Es ist eigentlich ein Künstlerinnenfrühstück natürlich und ich freue mich sehr darauf, Sie wiederzusehen. Bleiben Sie dem Kunsthaus treu. Vielen Dank.